Hello, everyone, and welcome to another BingeBooks Book Club chat. I am so excited today to welcome author Mel Walker, and we are going to be talking about his process and his writing life, but also about his book, Dr. No, which is available right now. You can jump in if you did not have a chance to read it in advance of this chat. So to kick off things, I'd like to welcome you, Mel. Thank you for coming on the BingeBooks Book Club, and can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm super excited about this. I've had this date circled for a long time. I'm a huge fan of the platform and, of course, a huge fan of you. So thank you so much. Um, about myself. So what I've learned to describe myself is the rare bird, which I didn't realize was such a rare bird until I
When you were in
started.
it. Yeah.
Yes. So I am the male romance author. And more specifically, I like to write contemporary romance with a low heat level. So very few men are in that category, which I've discovered, which is pretty cool, actually. But I love what I'm doing. I love the whole author journey and being a romance author.
And you write a lot of small town romance also, is that correct?
Yes, yes. I love small town romance, which is really people always like raise their eyebrow when they find out I'm an actual native New Yorker and live in New York, and they go, "But he writes small town." But there's a method to the madness.
So if and when you retire, are you going to move to a small town, or are you happy and do you think you'll be in New York forever?
I'm a born and raised New Yorker. I think I'll be here forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll continue to visit small towns. I love small towns, but I think my roots are here. So.
I love that. And it is a rare bird in the romance world, especially. We do have a lot of men that go into erotica writing. But as far as clean romance, there's not a lot. And I was thinking about this in advance of the chat, and it was like, why is that? Like, why do we assume that women write romance? And why do we assume that women read romance? Because, like with every genre, everyone enjoys different things. So can you take us back to before you were a writer, and at what stage in your life did you decide to start writing, and then why did you choose romance?
Sure. So I think the journey is probably familiar to most authors, been writing most of my life. I think in the college years is when I really got serious about the writing in terms of, I was a nerd. So typical author introvert. So I would actually write short stories and hand them out to my friends. That was how I made friends. And what spoke to me, I always wrote about the challenges between people, which really is relationships, which is really love stories and romance. And so I learned the difference. But I used to write love stories and then migrated over to romance as well, just because I love the happily ever after in terms of two people coming together and overcoming the challenges that life throws at them, and finding happiness and joy. And so that was my experience coming throughout college and everything. And I continued to write, had wonderful family, 2 kids, got very busy with them. And it was really once they got really ready to launch, when the oldest started preparing to go to college, is when I really doubled down into it and said, you know what, I'm going to focus on this. This is something that brings me joy. Let me really dig in and take this seriously. And I started going to conferences, taking craft classes, going to seminars, and really understanding the process in terms of being a professional independent author.
I love that. So before, when you wrote, like through college and, as your kids were born and young, were those all just like bottom drawer? Like you would just write stories and no one ever saw them? Like, are those stories that you have since published, or what
Yeah,
happened to all of those?
that's a great question. So a lot of it becomes fodder, but yeah, a lot of it's bottom drawer stuff. Some of them I shared with some close friends, especially short stories. I did a lot of short stories back in the day. The novels, some of the early ones, no one will ever see. I go back and look at them and I go, wow, this is really bad.
Yeah, I was one of those authors that published my first novel, and I'm like, oh, I can't read it. Like it's
Yes.
just yeah. There definitely is a reason why,
Yeah.
why it's good to write a bunch of books before you publish a book.
Yeah.
And I have to say, Mel and I crossed paths at a conference. Like that was how we first met each other. And you are such a fantastic student of craft and of the business. And I love seeing that because a lot of authors just kind of jump in without really learning. And you can tell when you read this book, when you read your other books, you could tell that there's a lot of knowledge there and there's a lot of history there in your characters and in your
I
plot.
appreciate it. And I remember that day very vividly, meeting you for the first time. I had read your book, Moonshot, at the time, and it just blew me away. I'm a lifelong baseball fan, and that
Okay.
book is just
And
amazing.
the Yankees are in the book. Are you a Yankees fan? Or
I'm
are
a
you?
Met fan. I'm
Oh,
a
you are,
Met
yeah.
fan, but it's all good. It's all good. And I was like, I have to go meet her.
Well, I feel very lucky that our paths did cross, and talking about books and getting into it. So you publish, I feel, such a high number of books each year. So how many books on typical do you write a year?
So last year I did 7 books. I'm on track to do 8 this year. Yeah, don't not recommend it. But it's a combination. And they're not all full length books. I do write in anthologies. I use that as part of my learning the industry and networking with other authors as well. So typically I'll have 3 or 4 anthologies that I'll have novellas or shorts in as well. So I try to do both in terms of covering my learning and networking while at the same time working through my craft.
And so when talking about anthologies, so readers who are listening and maybe aren't familiar with anthologies are one book that is one product, which is a collection of stories. And oftentimes they're shorter stories. Sometimes they're just 5 or 10,000 words. Sometimes they're 15 or 20,000 words. But it's a chance for you to read a lot of different stories that are often on kind of the same topic, or they have a connected world, or they have a connected. So this book is actually part of a series. The book we're talking about today, Dr. No, is actually part of a series. It's not an anthology. But can you talk a little bit about this series and this world and how the books in this series are connected?
Sure. So it's part of this world called the Doctors of Eastward General. So it's a hospital in Rhode Island, and all of the doctors interact at that same facility. So that's the shared world part. And so it was a brainchild of a romance author, S.L. Sterling. She came up with the idea and she reached out to her network last year. And I think it was 12 or 13 of us that wrote in the first season. And it was very well received. And so we renewed it and we're back for season 2. And that's where Dr. No exists. But it's a wonderful, I love writing in shared worlds with other authors, one for the networking, but also the collaboration. So, we'll talk in terms of, venues like the coffee shop, the flower shop in the hospital, nurses at certain floors, just so that from a reader standpoint, they have a cohesive view of the hospital and the different characters and the crossover ability.
That seems so fun. Like you said, like if one of the authors has an idea to let's have a coffee shop or something like that. So I love that. And so did you write in the first season also?
Yeah, I had a book in the first season called Dr. Fix It. So
Dr. Fix It. Okay.
yeah,
And are they all Doctor something?
they're all Dr. something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. So one of the audience questions, which now we've covered that, but ask, is Dr. No your first published book? So obviously it's not. Do you know what number how many books you've written?
Yeah, so that's always a tough question. So I think I have.
It's got to be hard to keep track.
Yeah, because I do some of the anthologies are limited edition, and then they go unpublished. So I think this one's probably 26 or 27 in terms of publishing, but there's probably about 19 or so that's actually available right now.
And the anthologies, do you get the story back? Are you going to publish those or send them out to your newsletter or do anything like
Yeah.
that?
Yep. Yeah, I get those stories back. A lot of times, depending on the theme, I'll try and incorporate somebody from one of my other series. So those short stories, for example, I have a Lake Hope small town romance series. I've written short stories and anthologies with additional characters, side characters from that series, and then I'll put that out as bonus material, as a freebie, or on a newsletter.
That's great. And we do have a lot of questions coming in, but I do want to focus for a moment on specifically on Dr. No.
Sure.
So if someone's joining and they haven't read the book yet, can you give kind of a short,
Sure.
synopsis?
Sure. So Dr. No, it deals with I call her a brilliant neurologist. She's the assistant chair at her department in a big city, Baltimore. And a family tragedy causes her to head to Rhode Island to take care of a family member there. And so while she's there, she actually has to take care of her niece. And so she's always been career focused, just focused on her life and her career. And now all of a sudden she has to manage a household. She has an 8-year-old niece that she has to manage. And then at the same time, since she's relocating, a whole new dynamic in terms of working with a hospital in a small town, which is totally different than Baltimore. And so really the story is about her journey in terms of making that adjustment. And by the way, there's a sexy next door neighbor, Simon.
I was about to say, this is a romance, so
Yeah.
you gotta mention the hero. Yeah.
There's a next door neighbor that seems very perfect for her and starts to become a big distraction for her. So
I love this. So, and from the very beginning, when you meet Cynthia is the lead character, the main doctor. She is presented so well. I mean, she is obviously extremely career focused, extremely smart, and she's got her stuff together, and she is, moving down her path, right, and doing all of the things right. So you immediately tell. I just loved her from the start. I mean, because she was both compassionate, but also very very strong, a strong female. And it was also interesting because it is very technical in terms of the medical facility, but you're not drowning us in detail, but you write very competently in that space. So do you have medical experience or?
Spend a lot of time researching. like most authors, we spend a lot of time making phone calls, asking for people's opinions, and running things past people.
I love that. And one of the comments from YouTube, they said, I love the elevator pitch. I can relate to Dr. No because I'm an auntie and I adore my nieces, but I can't imagine having full custody of them. I love the sexy neighbor part, though. I'll take that.
Oh, nice.
And I also love the.
Hey, I think you might have frozen, or I'm frozen.
I think I lost us for a minute.
Yeah.
Are we back?
We're back.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah. So I was saying that I love her parents and also just their kind of meddling helpfulness in terms of her love life and their opinions of what she should be doing. Yes. So it's a great all around cast of characters. Another YouTube reader said, hi, Mel, how do you find anthologies with shared worlds to apply to? And also, do the characters in the Doctors V support have any other medical professionals, such as nurses or NPs or PAs, or are they all doctors? I don't even know what an nurse practitioner, I guess. Yeah.
So, in terms of the shared worlds, there are some Facebook groups that advertise in terms of anthologies going out there that you can do a search in terms of Facebook for anthologies and collections. They're out there. Most of the ones I've been involved with have been through networking, where other authors have reached out and said, hey, I know you do anthologies. We have one spinning up. Would you be interested in X, Y, or Z? So really just make it known that you're interested, and I think the universe will deliver for you. And in terms of the doctor series, there are other medical professionals in there. So there are each of the series and each of the, working through the hospitals, there's nurses, there's other, we talk about the anesthesiologists, the radiology, et cetera. So there are other characters and other professions that cross over.
And Jennifer from YouTube says, as a male, and this is probably the question you get the most, how do you write from a female perspective? And I have to say, you do such a fantastic job with Cynthia. It didn't feel awkward. It didn't feel, So do you typically write in third person or first?
First person typically.
Mhm.
And yeah, thank you for the question. I love this question. So growing up, my mom is amazing, and all my aunts, everybody, and so I've always been surrounded by very strong females, and they're very opinionated. They're they make their they don't hold anything back. So I've always had that as a model in terms of the female perspective. And of course, my wife is also in that ilk as well. And I'll talk to her in terms of, perspective and see the career challenges that she has to navigate on a daily basis. And not just in the career, but even socially, some of the challenges there. So as an author, just being attuned to my surroundings, I pick up on a lot of that and incorporate that into the female perspective, and hopefully do a decent job. So.
Are there times like if you're sitting and listening to like your female relatives or your wife talk about something, do you ever make little notes, or do you ever think like, oh, this is something I could use? Or, this is like, I would think that you're much more observant with how, um, because there are differences. I mean, not across the board, but, oftentimes, you know, maybe a female would react to something differently. So do you ever, and do you ever ask your wife's advice when you're trying to figure out how a character is going to react to something?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do ask a lot of advice from females in my life, because a lot of it, as a man, it's doesn't show up on your radar. So some certain things you take for granted. So for example, I'm a big runner. I'm running a couple of different running groups. And the female runners, especially in the evening, have specific challenges in terms of just going out and run, something that a man doesn't even think about. They
Yeah,
just go out and
that's
run.
a good point. Right.
And so those little things you pick up on, those little nuances, in terms of that unique perspective in terms of their worlds. And so yeah, I try to keep my antenna raised and pick up on all of those little nuances.
And speaking of being kind of a rare bird in this industry, when you first came into it, and you are very active in our industry, I mean, you have a lot of friends. You're an interactive part of our community. Was it hard in the beginning? Do you think that you had to? Um, was it hard in the beginning to be accepted and to find a
Yeah,
community?
yeah, I've been blessed, and this is my entire life. I feel like I've been blessed. I've always been surrounded by really good people, and the romance community is like one of the best. They've been so kind and open and welcoming, to me when I came into the community. Samantha Cole, who within your group, she's given me a ton of advice when I started out early, and people just they're happy. They see a male romance author and they're like, hey, and they ask me a bunch of questions, and they tell me about their journey as well. And it's been a wonderful journey.
I love that. And I think it also helps that you are so above board, and you make it easy for for people to like you. Okay, so question from YouTube. What is your writing process?
So yeah, this is it's always refining.
Really changing? Yeah.
Yeah, it's always refining. So my current process, is I'll go through a rough outline. I really focus in on the characters first, and I'll build that out. And then not a plotter or a pantser, I'm somewhere in between. And typically I'll write what I call my nano style, where I'll focus in. Nano is the National Novel Writing Month, where you write a book in a month. And so when I'm in writing mode, I try to focus in for one solid month of straight writing. And I'll try to write almost every day, during that period, to get to that first draft, that very messy first draft. And then I'll set it aside, let my brain decompose for a bit, step away from it for a bit, and then come back to it, and then start all of the goodness in terms of the cleanup work, where you start to build and try to add all of the emotional elements, clean up all of the grammar and the language and stuff there, and really try to parse out themes that always surprise you. When you're writing it, you think you have one theme in mind, but then when you actually finish your draft and you read it again, you see other themes emerge, and you're like, wow, I need to really focus in and hone in on that theme.
So can we talk about themes for a minute? Because I was oblivious to themes really until just this week or last week when I had an author chat and I learned a lot more about themes. So for readers who maybe aren't familiar with themes, how do you define themes, and like what would be an example? Would it give away if you told us kind of what the theme was in Dr. No?
Oh no, yeah, it's so themes are really, it's like a recurring storyline, and for your character in terms of what they're actually searching for and what they're looking to find out. So, for example, I'll divert from Dr. No for a second. A lot of times you'll see in small town romance somebody returning to the town and reconnecting with family members, etc. And so there's usually like this overriding theme as to where home is. That the person might have left searching for something else, and they realize that what they've been searching for is their home all along, and it's always been their hometown. They're either the person or the town or the setting, or something like that. So that's really where the themes really play in terms of as an example. And similar in this, in terms of Dr. No, she thought she was all career focused, and she had everything in her life that she needed, and realized it wasn't true. And her theme was family. It's all about family in terms of that's what makes her complete, finding her romance, building her family unit.
And I don't think this is going to spoil anything for anyone who hasn't read Dr. No, but one of like the things that stood out for me that is such a great example of Cynthia is early on in the first couple of chapters, there's kind of like her mantra, which is go alone. And that like gives her peace. It gives it like, that is kind of like she goes alone. Like, did you hear that somewhere else, or is that
Oh
something?
yeah, yeah. So that it's African. It's actually an African proverb. So if you want to go far, I mean, if you want to go fast, go alone. And then the second part of it is, if you want to go far, you have to go with people. So you need a community in order to go far. But if you want to just go fast, you can go by yourself, but you're not going to get very far.
I love that. And so when that happened, I was like, oh, I see what's going to happen here, but it was just a great example of her and her mentality.
Yep.
And I love that her saying that like gave her like peace, not, she didn't see it as a lonely thing or a bad thing. So you said during your writing process, and like when you're in nano mode or whatever, you write every day. And from YouTube, Karen says, what does your writing day look like? I think I heard you talk about it a little bit recently. Can you review it with us?
Oh, sure. So I'm a morning person. So I'll get up at 5:30, 6 in the morning, and try to crank out 1,500-1,600 words in the morning. I do have a day job, so like go off to that, and then in the evening, I'll pair that up and try to do another 1,500 or so words. So when I'm in writing mode, I'll try to do 2,500 to 3,000 words a day. When I'm cranking. So
and I'm going to dissect it even further. So like you get up, like you're in your pajamas in the living room or in an office, or
home, we have a home office.
Before you even eat?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Before I eat, I go straight from the bed, straight to the home office. What I've learned from Nano is you leave a little thread at the end of the night in terms of where you want to pick up in the morning. And that actually plays in your subconscious as you sleep. And so you pop out of bed, it solved whatever your problem is from a planning standpoint, and you hit the ground running in the morning in terms of, oh, I have to get this down. And that seems to work for me.
So like a little thread, you mean like a couple sentences of the next scene, or
Yep.
just like a summary of the next scene that you're going to write?
Yeah, usually a couple of sentences of the next scene, trying to leave it off in the middle of the scene, as opposed to trying to get to an end of the scene and then staring at the blank page in the morning going, okay, what do I do now?
I love that. And do you listen to music, or is it just silent?
I do. I listen to instrumental music when I'm writing. So I'll do, here's another tidbit. I'm a big Swiftie. So there's lots of Swiftie instrumental piano melodies on YouTube. So
Very cool. I recently discovered like noise, like Purple Noise I'll listen
Oh,
to
wow. Purple.
when I write. And purple noise sounds different than red noise, which sounds different than yellow noise. It's really interesting. And so if I'm writing like a happy scene, I'll write in yellow noise. And I thought that was interesting. Another question from the audience. And by the way, guys, we only have 5 minutes or so left. So if you have any questions, please ask them. We'll answer as many as we can. We won't get to all of them. But with 8 books a year, how long does a full-length novel take you to write once the prep and research is over? So 30 days? Can you do it?
I can press it into 1 month for the full length. And that, depending on the length of the book, that could be, several thousand words per day that I need to hit and just crunch on it. But yeah, I try to do it within a month.
And how long is a normal book for you?
Normal book is about 60 to 65,000. So not too long. I'm not doing fantasy sci-fi where it's 120,000 words.
But it's also not too short. I mean, 65 is a meaty, that's a meaty story. And do any of your books end in cliffhangers, or can any of them be read as a standalone?
They all can be read as standalones. So no cliffhangers.
Mm-hmm. And if someone has never picked up a Mel Walker book, what book would you suggest that they start with?
I always recommend Ryan's Kiss. It's book 1 in my Lake Hope small town romance series. It's a little town in Indiana, and it's a group of friends together, and they all have their interconnected stories.
I love that. And is that if you had to pick your favorite book, the book that you think is the best out of all of your books?
Oh my God, that's so hard.
I know. Who's your favorite child?
Yeah. It's right up there. There's several that are right up there, but yeah, Ryan's Kiss is up there. The Right Guy I love a lot as well. So,
and your books, I mean, you've been really consistent with your genre and with everything else. Do you think that you'll always write small town romance, or are there any other genres that you're kind of itching to move into?
I think for the most part I'll be sticking with small town romance. I think romance overall is probably where I'll go. Probably not all of them will be small town. There'll be some set in some big cities. But other genres, thrill is always out there, but that's a big leap.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a different world.
Yeah.
So, and someone in the audience said, I noticed you have some YA books too as an educator. I can't wait to check those out. So you talked a little bit about heat level. You said yours are low heat. Yep. But would you say any of your books are okay for young adult, or are there a specific recommendation if someone's a librarian or an educator who's looking to put books in a high school? Are there any books you point them to?
They for the most part, I think you're in safe grounds. A couple of them have a little more heat than others, so you just might want to just take a read through first. But none of them are explicit. Most of them are a closed door. But there are, some of them, there's some chemistry involved.
Yeah, chemistry is good. So that's perfect. Okay. I don't want to forget, with every BingeBooks chat, we do a giveaway for the authors. I'm sorry, for the readers who have RSVP'd. So be sure to RSVP for future BingeBooks chats. And I do want to congratulate Mel, was kind enough to donate 3 signed copies of Dr. No. And congratulations to our winners, Natalie H., Holly J., and Charlene M. All 3 of you will each be getting a signed copy of Dr. No. And please check your emails if that sounds like you, because you'll be getting an email from a BingeBooks team member. So we have time for a few more questions, and we'll try to just see how many we can get through. So what draws you to romance?
Love the happily ever after. I love the challenge between people in terms of meeting, getting over all of the conflicts in between, and getting to that happily ever after.
Sorry, if I break out, just keep talking, because
all right,
we'll still be able to see you. So don't worry.
All right. Yeah, perfect.
Did you answer what draws you to romance? I
yes.
wasn't sure. Yeah. Okay, perfect. All right. Next question. Have your characters ever surprised you?
Always. Yes, always. So there's a book, the last book in the Lake Hope series, Traces Forever. The characters just took over. That book is so different than what I outlined, but it came out so much better. It's yeah,
They
it's
know
a
what
whirlwind.
they're doing more than we do, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah, it was a whirlwind.
Like,
It was
move out of the way. I got this. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. That's pretty much what they said. They're like, yeah, you have an outline that's cute. I'm gonna go do this. But it went in the direction I did not expect, and it's it was a wild ride. I love that book. So,
And what was the name of that book again?
Traces Forever.
Traces Forever.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right. And that's a wrap. I think we got to all of the questions. Thank you so much for joining us, Mel. If you are listening and you have not yet checked out Dr. No, you can grab it now. It's in Kindle Unlimited. So you can grab it there or in paperback. Is it in audio? It's just paperback. Right?
Just paperback. Yep.
Just paperback. All right, perfect. And we will be back in a month with another BingeBooks Book Club chat. Our next book club chat is going to be with Rachel Hanna and her book, The Bucket List. So be sure to RSVP for that. Thank you again, Mel. Thank you to all of the fantastic audience members. We have a couple comments coming in from Facebook and everything else. Thank you, Mel.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
And we will see you all soon. Thank you so much for joining us.